Joining us now to talk more about this is Michigan Congresswoman Lisa McClain. Congresswoman, good morning. So nice to have you on.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Congresswoman. I know that right now you're looking at a bill that would address the United States not working with Chinese companies. I'm also wondering, though, what about American companies, companies like Apple and Nike and the NBA that are making an absolute fortune right now in China, despite everything else that's going on in that communist country?
Yeah. As a business owner, I understand the importance of profit, and I understand the importance of business. That is the capitalistic model in which we use that has made this country so great. However, I believe we need to add an "and" word, and we need to make sure that our intellectual property is protected and it's not being taken, so to speak, from the Chinese government.
Right.
That is our responsibility as a business, is to protect our intellectual property and our clients' data. And I think we can do both, but I think we need to have a much greater focus on protecting our intellectual property, because it is a real threat out there, as you know, probably more than I do.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you about a little bit more specific information when it comes to intellectual property. What about the companies, American companies, who clearly work for communist China in some way, but also then get contracts with U.S. intelligence agencies or the U.S. Defense Department? We know that if you work in China, you have to have a joint partner. And that means all of your data goes immediately to the communist Chinese government. Is it right to have U.S. companies working for both communist China and on sensitive intelligence and DoD contracts?
So that is exactly the topic of the bill that we're taking a look at right now, because we have, every committee hearing that I've been in, all I have heard is China is our number one threat, our number one threat, our number one threat. And we currently, I was in a meeting or a hearing yesterday with the Secretary of Defense, and I actually questioned him on this. And he assured me, although he couldn't give me any action steps or any specifics, that our data is protected. I think I want a little bit more assurance that when we do business with a communist country, such as China, that we, the American people, have some assurances that our data and our security is at the utmost important and that it's protected. And that's what I'm trying to work with, to make sure that we can be profitable, we can do business in a global market, but there has to be that "and" there, and we have to figure out how to make sure that our data, our sensitive data, especially our military data, is protected. Now, I believe we can do that, but we have to start with talking about it first.
Well, first of all, I know a little bit about this subject as
can't hear you.
As acting director of national intelligence. But let me.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I know a little bit about this as former acting DNI, and one of the things that you are exactly right to focus on is that sensitive information. First of all, we can protect our data, but when a company does a joint partnership in communist China, we no longer have the ability to protect everything, because now it's a Chinese company and that's what China requires, is if you're going to work in China, you are required to have a joint partnership as an American company. So you're exactly right. I think we have a soundbite of the Secretary of Defense being asked this by you specifically. Let's see if we can play it.
You know, I think we can. We need to continue to engage our partners and allies and emphasize the importance of this. We need to make sure that as we convey equipment, that we are confident that the people that we're conveying it to can protect the intellectual property.
All right, so Congresswoman, that gets back to the point there. You said you needed to hear more before you're ready to move forward with that, which makes perfect sense. I think the defense secretary was deliberately vague in his response to you there. I want to go to Hong Kong. Their daily newspaper, Hong Kong's Apple daily newspaper, they printed their very last edition. The government went in, and this is what's going on in China. By the way, we're about to go to Beijing in February and celebrate the Olympics there. I have a lot of questions about that too, and the coronavirus, and the Uyghur Muslims. The government went in, they froze all their funds, all their money, they seized their computers, and then arrested the executives at this newspaper, which is like the size of the Boston Globe. What do you make of this move, and is this the end of democracy and a somewhat free press, at least in Hong Kong?
It sure looks like it to me if I'm an outsider looking in. I mean, I'm a big cause and effect person. I don't know what other reason or what other conclusion you could come to,
right,
other than the conclusion that you just made. And this is what we need to stand up and we need to fight against. Yes, profit is important and business is important, but at the end of the day, in my business, before I got to politics, the client was the client. And the clients of America are the American people. And we need to start thinking about what our actions are doing. And we need to begin to get really tough, much like our past administration was tough, because the policies of our past administration, they worked. And Trump was I know he was a Republican, but from an outsider looking in, from the diplomats that I've talked to, that I've spoken with, excuse me, he wasn't really a Democrat, obviously, but he really didn't fit the traditional Republican mold. So they were always a little cautious and they were a little bit on their heels because they didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
That played very well. And I think
that was an asset.
It would be in our best interest to have a little bit more of that. Right now.
I think that was an asset. I think it was, Ronald Reagan was a Democrat before he was a Republican, so was President Trump. Geez, I mean, the Clintons came to the president's wedding in the early 2000s. So I think that was an asset. I think you make a great point. Please keep us up to date on the progress of this bill. This is so important, especially right now. Congresswoman Lisa McClain, so nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks
nice to see you.